marketing idea.
All right. So, I want to welcome you to another episode of Laid Back History. Brian just asked me, he said, what do you want to talk about? And I said, I don't know, about frontier forts and how they, how this one, sort of has features of all the forts in Washington County. And he said, oh, okay. I said, we'll just wing it. So,
which we typically do anyway.
So you might have to speak up a little bit. So
yeah. Okay.
So we're just going to wing it. And we're standing up at the Washington County Frontier History Center. Brian is our leader of the fort committee, who oversees the site and manages programming and maintenance and preservation.
A lot of maintenance.
Yeah, a lot of maintenance right now.
Hopefully more programming.
More programming for sure.
Yep.
So we're just going to talk a little bit about it. Now I thought, when we built this back in 2009, 10, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there, we didn't want to replicate any one fort. What we wanted to do was kind of give the most common features of all the forts in Washington County.
Keep it standard instead of a typical one.
Right. So,
and that's typical one that was actually built.
And that's kind of what we have. So we're just going to talk about that. So I'm actually going to be behind the camera most of the time.
Really?
Yeah, I'm going to go hold the camera.
Wow.
And we're going to just kind of walk through and let Brian tell you a little bit about forts, because you did a ton of research on forts for your thesis.
My thesis.
For your thesis. Okay.
Specifically in Washington County.
Nice. So sorry about the jerky camera here for a second. Let me get my hand in. Okay.
All right. So to give you a little idea, though, just a tiny bit of background. Washington County was probably one of the most, I think it is the most fortified county in all the United States. Statistics differ, but well over 40 different forts built between the years of about 1768 and 1795. So a lot of fortifications, and they weren't military fortifications. They were settler forts, which means it's the people living out here, either one family, several families going together, either building a large fort, or those single families, maybe 1, 2, or 3, building just a blockhouse. But as Clay was saying, we want to take features of all of them to give an idea of what a typical one would have looked like, but showing those different features so that we can inform the public about it.
So you said between 1768 and
69, somewhere in there. And
so what was the first one?
I think the first one, if I'm thinking back, I think it's down along, I'm trying to think, was it up? I can't remember the last name now, but it was down along 10 Mile Creek. I think that's for the first one, which kind of, that would make a lot of sense, because really it's not until 1768 that you can actually move into these counties, or actually go west of the Alleghenies.
So, and one other thing while I'm thinking about it, when you say Washington County 40 forts, are you talking about present-day Washington County or Washington and Greene?
No, present-day Washington County. If we would add in what was the northern part of the county, which was lost to Allegheny, and the southern part that was lost to Greene County, that would even bring in more forts.
Okay.
So we're just looking at just Washington County as it exists today.
And one of the earlier forts would have been Wolf's Fort, right?
Yeah, Wolf's Fort was built in, I think, 74. I think somewhere in there, if I remember correctly.
We're going to try to take a road trip out there at some point, but that's out past Club 40.
Yeah.
On the left-hand side.
Maybe a mile or so past Club 40.
If you've watched any of the Diggers, then you will have seen Brian and I. Oh, there's Brian's truck.
Yeah, look at that.
So you will have seen us on an episode on an episode of Diggers where we actually dug out at Wolf's Fort.
We found a lot of really interesting artifacts. Now, see, that's a different type of fort, because that was a fortified house. All right, so that was actually Wolf's house that he fortified. He put a stockade around, or built a stockade to it. But others, like I said, could have been just a blockhouse shared by several families. But I think why we found so many different artifacts there is because that was his residence. Okay. So you're going to have a lot more lost, material culture.
So did most people live in their forts, or were they built to be used only for a little bit of
Yeah, really, I think the majority of forts weren't, resided in. You do find that, they are forting up at times, and everyone would say, oh, you fort up at the first warm day of spring until the last warm day in the fall, Indian summer. But for the most often part, I think they would have sat abandoned, just like you would have seen today. You know, but if there was Indian sign or people knew that there was Native Americans in the area, they would ford up. So at a moment's notice, you might have to go inside it. And really, a lot of times too, people, they always talk about the walls of the fort. You have to remember too that walls aren't built to just keep things out. They're also meant to keep things in, because you would be bringing with you your cattle, your horses, and everything else. You could hobble horses, but if you left them outside, there's so many stories about Indians leading the horses away, leading the cattle off, the oxen off. So you would bring your oxen inside. So I always like to tell people what the inside of a fort would have looked like during the time people were forting up in it. Just look at any barnyard in the springtime and see how muddy it is. That is what that would look like inside there.
Wouldn't be nice and grassy like it is now?
No, it would not be like that.
So, did all forts have stockades, or were they just sometimes blockhouses?
You would have something called a strong house or a blockhouse. You know, it's just a well-fortified cabin, which we kind of have on the inside in there. It could just be that. Then you would have a stockaded blockhouse, which could either mean the blockhouse is on the inside, and it has a stockade around it, or like we have here, it could be part of the wall.
Okay. So when you say blockhouse, you're talking about what we have right here.
Exactly.
And
a strong cabin. Typically, they wouldn't have windows in them. Yes, we put a window in here.
well, we did that more for light, right?
More for light, but also this is the interior of the fort. I wouldn't see it as such a thing that you couldn't have a window inside like this, because defensively you don't want a window like that, because it's just another mode of entry.
Right.
You know, they would have made sure that those doors were awful strong, and they had gun ports, which you could see through right there in the light.
Ooh, well, let's go in and see.
All right, let's do that.
So gun ports, or were they called loopholes?
Loopholes, gun ports, you know, they're made so that you can, you know, windage, not so much elevation. I'll tell you the one thing that you would have seen in a building like this, or even on the outside, and we'll show you some of the loopholes in the stockade. Fort Pitt's blockhouse. I had the opportunity to excavate that. And when you go in there, there are loopholes that when you're standing there, they're like this. Now you would never want a loophole here, because easily enough someone could run outside and shoot you. So typically you'd want your loopholes higher.
And then you'd stand
because
on
the balls
something.
would be above your head. And yes, you'd have what they call a shooting block. So you would, you know, a log or something you'd stand on top of and shoot and then come down. And when we excavated Fort Pitt Blockhouse, when you looked at the loopholes where the floor was, I would have to almost reach that high, and that's where it was, because any rounds coming in are not going to hit anybody. And the same thing with outside. A lot of times they'd have just a mound of earth.
Right.
The loophole was cut higher. But, you know, in here it would have been tough to do that, just because we'd had to have a lot more logs, or the floor would have been a lot lower. But, you know,
now,
we have a nice floor in here.
We do know of a story, and I don't know how common this was, of somebody actually being shot through a loophole. That was at Rice's Fort, when they were defending Rice's Fort, and I never remember the guy's name. It was a very...
Was it Fellenbaum?
Fellenbaum, yes,
Yeah.
it was.
Yep.
It was George Fellenbaum.
Yep.
He actually, not long after the battle, where they were defending the fort started, a shot came through and hit him right in the forehead.
And he was hit on the second floor. So up there, they would have had the loopholes, because a lot of the second stories is what they call like a half story, or I'm trying to think what the word they used. Can't think of it right now. But so they would have been in a crouched spot. So, you know, they've been firing out something like this.
Okay.
That's probably why I got shot. But I mean, anytime you're standing up, even, you know, up here,
the shot still could come through.
Still could come through.
Okay. Now our blockhouse here, we just have, we're going to put a loft in, but it's not a shooting loft.
No.
Yeah, it's just going to be a loft for some
Or
storage.
for storage.
Right.
And, you know, really, did they have big fireplaces like this in them? No. What this, if I was to say what this was, this would be more indicative of, you know, John Smith came out here to the frontier and he built a cabin. He built a strong cabin. All right, he had the loopholes and everything in it, cut into it, and this is where he's living, much like Wolfe.
Right. Yeah.
So you could say that this is sort of like what Wolfe would have had. You know, he would have had his cabin, and then he would have stockaded his cabin.
Because Wolfe put one all the way around his.
Yes. Yeah,
Now
we don't know if it was, that's the reports, was it around it, or was it like this, that it was built into part of it?
Gotcha.
You know?
Okay. Now, we also have, and I'm sorry, I'm going to shake for a second, but I got to get my hand better in this camera. Sorry, everyone. Sorry for the motion sickness. We do have an interior cabin. So
Yes,
we have the blockhouse. We have an interior cabin. Now, not all of them had extra cabins, built into it. But this one, the way it's built, is that its outside wall is part of the stockade.
Correct.
Okay.
And what this would have been typical of is one of the largest forts in the area was
Lindley's Fort.
Lindley's Fort.
I knew where you were going.
Prosperity was in my head. And that was what they talk about down there. This fort was huge. I mean, they talked about a couple hundred people.
Wow.
But there were cabins built on the outside, but there were also cabins built into the walls from the report. So that's what's typifying this. This is an additional cabin that would have been built. It could have been, let's say, like I said, John Smith and his family come out here, another family comes in, they build a cabin into the wall. Okay. It's just an additional area. But as you can see in this one, no windows. It will have a strong door put on it. And in this one, we wanted to show what an actual overhanging second story looked like. So that's what this is to replicate and the idea of an overhanging second story, it's not that, oh, it looks cool. No, what it's for is all about defensive. Here, the blockhouse extends past the wall.
So you can shoot down the wall. Yes,
because the one thing you don't want to have happen, I always tell people about this, think of the Alamo. Why the Alamo fell was all the defenders were able, all the attackers, the Mexican army was allowed to pile up against the wall. And they couldn't shoot down at them. They couldn't rake the walls. And if you look at forts, why they have those diamonds off of the corners.
So you can shoot down.
So you can rake your walls with fire. And that's why it's set like this, because that way we can rake that wall, we can rake that wall. This course here can rake these walls. The only thing that we can't is that sometimes when you would have a bastion like this, it would be overhanging as well, so that you could rake the front of your walls. You don't want any wall that a defender can get up against that you can't shoot.
I do want to say, when we first built this cabin, it didn't have the second level put on it, but we had an Eagle Scout project with can you read that? Patrick Moran. Him and his father. His mother too was out here. Yeah, they were out here working.
I just remember cutting those logs.
Yeah, working their butts off. Yeah, his dad was out here too. I forgot about that. Yeah, but it was wonderful. We came out, and he had a wonderful group that went ahead and put everything. If you see the lighter mortar here, and then the darker, everything from there up, they did. And so we're getting ready to put a roof on it this year. In fact, part of what we're going to be doing this summer is we'll get to that at the end.
Yeah, we'll get to the end.
But we're going to be putting a new roof on there.
We'll talk about the upgrades we'll do on these different buildings.
So we got a bastion, which is just a raised platform. I mean,
exactly, raised platform. It's defensive. Again, it'd have been great if we could have it, extending out over. That's what they typically would have done. But we wanted to show that yes, forts have had bastions in them as well. So we're kind of looking a little more of the military option on something like this. I don't know many settler forts that had bastions, but they would have had blockhouses in the corner for the same idea, that you can rake the walls, just like Prickett's rebuilt fort down in West Virginia today. If you see the blockhouses are at the corners of the fort.
And then we also have a little lean-to. The main purpose of that is so that when we did our historic demonstrations, I wanted a blacksmith shop. So yeah, that's my blacksmith shop. I've done blacksmithing in there before. The anvil's not there right now, but yeah, I do blacksmithing in there. But
even at Wolf's Fort, they talked about that additional lean-tos were built along the interior walls.
Oh, really?
For people to live under.
Okay,
so
didn't know that.
The thing is, when you come here to Fort Up, if that's someone's house, you're not in that. You got to get out of the elements somehow. So they talked about building little lean-tos into the walls of the fort.
And now, whereas the one over here, the back wall of this cabin is the outside wall of the fort. This one, the back wall of the lean-to is the actual stockade.
Yep.
Okay, so you can see how that's just all bolted in.
And you'd be wondering, like, well, how typical would it be to have a blacksmith shop or some kind of cobbler industry?
Well, Lindley had them.
Yeah, and that's the thing they talk. What's interesting is you hear, it was a fort down in Greene County. Now, I think it might have been McFarland's fort. But this is when they were coming around to get everyone to sign the Oath of Allegiance to Pennsylvania. And they talked about inside the fort, because there were a lot of little cabins on the inside of this fort. And one of the guys took up, not residence, but he was running his business out of there. He was a cobbler. He was running a shoe shop out of one of the little cabins. Probably something much like that you see right there.
You want to walk outside? We'll show them how how they could rake down.
Oh, yeah, and here's the thing too. This is what they're talking about, the little loops holes here. This isn't so bad because you can't really get your gun. So you'd need something to stand up on in order to fire out of.
But they wouldn't be able to run right up and stick their
gun in or fire coming through.
Okay. So let's walk around outside. Let's see where Bryan was talking about how the cabin is offset. Okay.
So see, here's the thing. If you had the enemy up against the walls of your fort, you have that loophole right down there that you could rake the wall to keep them off.
I'll get a little closer so you can see it. It's actually, there's something stuffed in there right now to seal it for the winter. But yeah, you can see how they can shoot right down through.
And let's walk around. We'll show about the overhanging second story. And one of the stories that they talked about that they used to do to get people off the walls.
Oh, okay.
Now, some forts were square, rectangular, whatever you want to call it, and some were round too. They talk about rounded stockades, much like Fort Necessity had a circular stockade.
Okay.
So there were some that were circular stockades out here as well. But I think forts like this are more defendable because on a circular stockade, the enemy can you can't rake your walls with a circular stockade. So
we have
the overhanging second story.
Please ignore the one post that's falling. We're going to fix that.
Yep. So now you might be thinking, well, what if the enemy got up underneath here and you have no portholes to fire out of? Well, what they would do is they would have boards here that they can open up and they would dump down boiling water or anything else to drive the people away from the wall.
Wow, really?
Yep. There are a lot of reports about that, opening up the boards, pouring hot water down on top of the enemy.
All right, so speaking of water, with their forts, did they try to have a well or a water source inside them, or what would they try to do?
Yeah, most definitely, the best I can't even get it out. The best opportunity would be to have a well within the fort. Williamson Station was one of them they talked about.
Yeah.
He had 3 buildings. I think he had his residence. I think one might have been a barn, but I know one was the building over the spring.
Okay.
And it's actually, I think, in Forrest's book, he has a picture of it. I think it was one of the last buildings, one of those last parts of the forts out here whenever he went around the 20s, I think, when he did his research. But so it was a 3-walled fort, but the 3 walls were between those buildings. So they had a spring that was part of, so it had been a building like this, that a building was over like this over the spring.
Oh, okay.
And that was at Williamson, which is today out in the T-Town Game Lands. That fort was out in there. Or you want something that's very close, water that's very close, because again, having to get water, that's what people talk about. They have to go get water and then people go missing. So
was Rice's fort a strange one then? Because they were up on a terrace away from the water, with no direct access to it.
No, so you think about that, I guess at some point they would have had barrels or something that they're bringing water up there. Right. But they never talk about that, Yeah. I mean, they are close enough to water. There could be springs that we don't know about today that were close enough to the fort. But, most of the time, they're within, I think, 75 to 100 feet of the fort. There was some kind of access to water.
So when people built their forts, it would have just been like a group of different families getting together sometimes, or? Yeah,
I think what you see is, you might have, say 4 or 5 families in an area, and they decide which is the most median spot to build a fort.
Okay.
And it could be on someone's property, but it's the closest for all. And you'll see them go together and build a fort. And it can also be that people came out there and someone already had a fort, and they're just going to go over and say, hey, can I fort up there?
Cool. Well, I think we're probably getting to the point where we try to keep them. We're trying to keep these at like 10, 15, or about 15 minutes.
Yep.
Bryan and I can just start talking, and so. But I want to make sure we talk about a couple other things, because the Frontier History Center, we're going to be doing a grand opening next year with the Historical Society, the new Research and Education Center, the restored crematory, all that kind of stuff. But we are going to be open this year. When?
Yes. So what we're planning on is the 2nd and 4th Sundays of every month, starting from June to September.
Okay.
That is the plan. We're going to be open from 1 to 4 on Sundays. the second and fourth Sundays.
So there's going to be a couple reenactors up here.
Yep.
We're going to have some volunteers. You'll probably see Bryan a lot.
I'll probably be up here a lot.
With his wife Kate coming up, probably doing a lot of them. But if you want to come up and see the fort site, see what we're doing, get some history. You talked about maybe doing some theme days for them.
It'd be great. It would be nice. I'm hoping for June and right up leading up to the Whiskey Rebellion Festival that it would be like Road to Rebellion. So we'll talk about the Rebel Roar. We'll talk about the Whiskey Rebellion.
Okay.
Maybe we might have some displays and things like that set up. We might be doing some cooking and things like that. The second part of the summer, I haven't decided yet. It might be something else. I don't know. It could be the Indian Wars of South.
And so we'll send out emails about that. But you can also look. We're creating a Schneider's Fort Facebook page. So it's SCHNEIDER. The fort is named after Fred Schneider, who was the president of the Historical Society when most of this came about. And Fred passed away. I just saw his wife. I think it was 10 years ago now, somewhere around in there. It's been a while, yeah. So we named the fort after him. Thought it was only fitting. So look up Schneider's Fort on Facebook. We'll have a Facebook page. But the reason we're not just doing a grand opening right now is because we have work to do.
Yeah, we do.
We're going to be, actually, as we're sitting here looking at it, we're going to be putting support poles on here just to make sure that they're a little stronger.
Yep, we need to get this back up. It's kind of leaning, so we got to put supports underneath that. Of course, we got this. We got to get this in.
Yeah.
But this Sunday is our first work day that we're planning on out here. What time are we going to be out here?
9:30, 10 o'clock.
Yep, 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
We're going to be out here. We're going to be putting those support
We're going to be putting poles in. We're going to put new gates on.
We're going to redo the gates. I think next year is going to be the new build for the new doors.
But we're going to at least shore these up and.
Yep. They're pretty. They're ready to be.
They've been up for 13 years, so they've done well.
Yep. But we're also utilize what's here, and we're just going to redo the insides like they should.
So that's this Sunday, but we're going to keep having work parties during the year. We want to put the roof on here.
Yep.
And get the doorway, get the door fixed, and you want to put a punch-in floor in there.
I actually want to put a floor in. So
what's a punch-in floor that we want to put in?
They would have put a punch-in floor in, which would have been log laid down, and then your planks on top of it. If we can.
Will logs split in two?
Yep. Yes, they were split in two.
Okay.
So the rounded side down and braced with rock and planks put on top.
Okay.
That would be great if we can do that in here. If not, we'll put something in.
Okay.
But we want to put a floor in this one to make it more usable, user friendly.
And by jacking the other side up, it'll also fix a lot of the issues that we have here.
Where it's separated.
Yeah, so we're going to probably re-chink a lot of that.
Yep.
Another thing we want to do is raise this door because we're tired of seeing people hit their heads on it.
Yes.
There's been
going to come up to about.
Yeah,
here,
we're going to raise it about 6 to 8 inches up. So
people like me and him don't have to duck every time we come in and out.
I think we're still going to have to duck, but maybe we won't smack our heads all the time.
Yeah.
So.
And a new door will go on here, new door on there. The big thing, I'll tell you, the one thing that we have problems with out here is security.
Vandalism.
We got a lot of vandalism. I mean, this door's knocked off for a reason. It's been knocked off for what now, a couple years?
Oh no, it hasn't been that long.
Well, they would always break our locks.
Yeah, they bust our locks all the time.
And they've stolen wood. We had an entire cabin filled with wood. The wood was all stolen out of there.
They've stolen stone.
Oh, everything.
Yeah, people are great.
Yeah. So the idea is to put some kind of locking mechanisms on these doors, much like goes on the gate out front, where it's going to make it impossible for people to knock doors in or get them off. Because the one thing that's hard is it would be great to have stuff set up inside here that whenever you come in, you can do it. But as of right now, for us to do anything, we have to come in, set everything up, tear everything down, take it with us, and it makes this much.
Makes a lot of work.
Makes a lot of work when you.
So we want to be able to have it open and be able to have people in here and make it a little easier.
And also along those lines too, we want to tell 18th century history out of here, but we don't want to limit to just that. We would love to get Civil War in here for programming.
Yeah.
I would love to do like a Wild West type of thing, and we've even had
a timeline event.
Yeah, we've had the SCA. Actually inquire about using this out here. So hopefully you'll see. Maybe, I don't know about this year, but in the years to come, that there's going to be a lot more wide variety to our programming.
But I got to thank Bryan, thank Rich Baker, which Rich, Willie Frankfurt, Ron Malgrum, Kevin Stevens, Joe Pizar, Don Weisler, who mows out here for us.
It would not look this nice without him.
Gary Nazer, who helped shore up the roof and get everything fixed there. Gary's been incredible. We've got a great group of guys, but we need more.
Yeah, we do.
We need more. So if you want to volunteer,
and we just don't, it'd be great to have history people to volunteer, but a site like this needs more than just history-oriented people. We need people that want to do maintenance. We need people that want to build.
Right.
We need people that want to help us fundraise, come up with ideas for programming. It's just more than history people that we need.
We need a little bit of everything.
We need, it's a massive site to run.
All right. Well, Bryan, thank you so much. It's been nice. Nobody had to see they only had to see my face a couple minutes. It's nice. We've got to see that angelic face.
The angelic, yeah. I'm glad it's a cloudy day here.
So anyway, check out Schneider's Fort on Facebook page. We'll be sending emails out about events, and if you're free on Sunday, coming Sunday at 9:30, 10 o'clock, we'll be out here. We'll be doing some work. We can use any help. Anybody that's willing to come out. We need people to just clean up
carry stuff out. We're going to burn a bunch of trash.
Be trimming up some of the trees that have fallen.
We got a lot of trees that, of course, come down. I think Joe Pizar would be the number one man for that.
Joe loves to cut stuff up. So anything you want to do to help, we appreciate it. And
around just helping. I mean, you might think, well, I can't lift anything heavy. Well, if you can drag some sticks and things like that, something that's not heavy, we can find something for you to do.
Without a doubt. So I'm going to make you look at me one more time. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Bryan, for being part of this. As always, Bryan is a longtime board member and very good friend of mine. I've drug him into way more things. He probably wishes we hadn't become friends.
Different organizations.
You probably wish that 10 or 15 years ago, whenever we met, that you would just walk the other way.
It all started with, hey, can you do some archaeology?
And now he's still here.
Still here.
So, well, anyway, thank you, Bryan. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And we will see you in 2 weeks for an all-new episode of Laid Back History, and maybe see you Sunday for an all-new episode of Let's